right now, and then we will start the webinar.
City planners have
Alan, there's no audio.
So that was an introduction and also a way to wait for other attendees to come. But we will introduce ourselves. I am Alain Mondrian. I am Space Project Manager at Aerospace Valley, which is one of the largest aerospace cluster in Europe. And we will host this webinar with my colleagues, Jennifer and Sylvie. And I will be helped by other project partners that we will present during the webinar today. So you probably wonder what is an OMC, and we will talk about that during the next 10 minutes. But before, I just want to have housekeeping rules.
City planners have traditionally used
And the first thing, of course, of this webinar is that it is in English, and it will be recorded and sent to participants. And all along the webinars, you see there is a QR code on the slide. A Slido is at your disposal, and it will be the only way for you to have interactions with us, where you can ask questions in the Q&A part. And you should see the first question of the webinar, which has popped up on your screen, normally on the right tab screen, right part of your screen, which is included in WebEx. If you prefer, you can also scan the QR code and use Slido on your phone. So if you close the Slido on your screen, you can also reopen Slido by clicking on the three dots in WebEx at the bottom right corner. We encourage you to ask as many questions as possible, as they will be anonymous, and the webinars are the best way to interact directly with the project partners of SPACE4Cities. However, please bear in mind we will not be able to answer, we might not be able to answer all questions, as the project is preparing the call for tenders, which will be launched in January 2025. And we also collect all the questions to answer them in a second time, and then publish the questions on SPACE4Cities website. So the agenda of this webinar, you probably this is first an introduction. Then we will introduce the second challenge of SPACE4Cities after urban planning, that is climate adaptation. And then we will present you a potential version of the rules and the selection criteria that could apply to the call for tenders. And eventually we will explain the PCP process before wrapping up the webinar. So for the introduction of the project and the OMC, just a brief summary of what is SPACE4Cities. So the project aims to develop replicable solutions, so technological demonstrators that use European space data, and by space data we mean Galileo data and services, and Copernicus data and services. In particular, we look for a dynamic solution to solve the dynamic management of public spaces issues. For that, we will launch one and only one call for tenders, which amounts for 2.87 million euros in 2025, as I previously mentioned. So SPACE4Cities is a project funded by Horizon Europe and is gathering 5 public buyers that, and 3 of them will present today. The public buyers are Helsinki, the coordinator, Attica, the region of Attica and Athens, Ghent, Guimarães in Portugal, and Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And last thing, the SPACE4Cities timeline. We began the project in February and it would last until mid-2026. So now what is the OMC for, and what does it stand for? It stands for Open Market Consultation, and the 3 main goals are to know what solution exists on the market, which one are commercialized, and it means we will have a state-of-the-art analysis that you will help us to understand, and to also know future solutions that can be interesting for cities. The second thing is to get inspiration and feedback from providers, so either researchers or SMEs and companies, before we draft our requirements and selection criteria. So you will have time during the webinar to comment on those requirements that Renske, our coordinator, will present. And the third thing, of course, is to allow you to directly interact with our public buyers. So for that, we have several activities. Of course, the first one are the webinars. We have this series of 3 webinars in English. We also have a webinar in each local language. So there will be, you can check on our website, there will be a webinar in Finnish, a webinar in French, a webinar in Dutch, a webinar in Greek, also that are running through October. And there is a survey for providers that you can fill. It allows you to dig into the challenges and to elaborate on your solutions and the requirements we suggest. Last thing, if you want to ask questions, there is questions at space4cities.eu. If you want to send us questions, there is also the OMC community. We will talk about that later. And if you look for a partner, we also provide you with a matchmaking directory, which you can find on our website. So the SPACE4Cities challenges, since February, our 5 public buyers and OASC, a network of cities across the world, are working on user needs, and they have identified 3 main topics related to their most urgent needs. The first one is urban planning. We've talked about it in the last webinar. The second topic is about climate change, adaptation, and resilience, and we will present you this challenge today thanks to our 3 estimated speakers. And the last one that we will present on the 28th of October, on the 25th, sorry, of October, is the Sustainable Mobility Challenge. So let's present first the challenge. And for that, I just want to give 2 words about the challenges that cities face in terms of adaptation. So here you can see on this graph which topics are tackled by climate adaptation plans, urban climate adaptation plans. So it's just an overview of the last disasters that happened and that can be linked to climate change. So the first one that we will talk about with Petros from the region of Attica, Development Fund of the region of Attica, is urban heat island. You can see it's the first climate risk that is mentioned. And then we have many types of water-related risks, especially floods, that we will present with Renate de Sutter from Ghent University. And the last main type of climate risk is drought and water scarcity that we will present also through another project. And the last thing for us to present is the cycle of the cycle adaptation cycle, sorry, which is divided in 6 steps, and space data and services can greatly contribute to most of the steps. And after speaking about the risks, we will also speak about solutions with Heli Ponto from Forum Virium Helsinki, and with a special focus on nature-based solutions in the city of Helsinki, and how can space data can contribute to that. So let's not wait more, and Petros, the floor is yours to present urban heat islands and wildfires.
Good morning from my side. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Thank you. So thank you, Alan. Thank you all for attending and for inviting me in this webinar. My name is Petros Podaras, and I represent the region of Attica, the partner of this project, like Alan said before. The region, can we move to the next? Can I control the slides, or is by you, Alan? Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, this is an overview of our region. Actually, the region of Attica is the biggest region in the country. It hosts the metropolitan area of Athens. And the main characteristic is, apart from that, it concentrates 40% of the country's population almost, and the same percentage of the country's economic activity, is the fact that actually you can imagine the region as basically, apart from the islands that belong to the region, as a big basin of the metropolitan area of Athens, surrounded by mountains and forest. So it is a kind of and this is the reason actually why we are focusing on those 2 basic challenges. Next slide, please, which are going to present today. And those are the urban heat islands effect and the wildfires. The urban heat islands effect basically impacts the metropolitan area of Athens, and the wildfires in the surrounding forest. So next slide, please. So as we all know, the heat island effect, refers to the phenomenon where urban or metropolitan areas like Athens experience significantly higher temperatures than the surrounding rural areas. So in our case, this is basically due to the dense population. It's over 3 million permanent residents, the extensive infrastructure and the high density of buildings, the limited green spaces. We have the lowest ratio of green spaces in Europe, as you see. A rise in average summer temperatures, which is noted in the recent years, and the increased frequency of heat waves. So, what is the next slide, please? What is the impact now of this in our region and overall? Yeah. So the effect, the UHI effect, indirectly impacts the in three dimensions the cities. It causes a significant increase in heat-related illnesses, such as heat exhaustion and heart stroke, which has a direct and long-term effect of higher healthcare costs and longer waiting times. It also puts additional strain on energy resources and contributes to higher carbon emissions and stresses on the city's aging electrical grid, leading to potential blackouts. And also it damages the urban infrastructures, which results in higher maintenance costs for the metropolitan area. And overall, this declines the well-being of the residents and the visitors of the region, of the metropolitan area. So next slide, please. Yeah. Now this is a dense slide. Actually, we try here to compile and put together all the related regional, national, and European policies, EU policies, first of all, which are applicable in the domain of heat of urban heat islands, as adaptation to the climate change and actions to be taken moving forward. The European on the left are the I have listed down here the European Green Deal, the EU Strategy for Adaptation to Climate Change, etc. There are other initiatives, policies, and directives that can are also applicable, like the Renewable Energy Directive, the Energy Performance of Building Directive, etc. From our side, at regional and national level, there is, of course, the Climate Action Plan for the region of Attica, the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, the Smart City and Climate Data Initiatives also that we have, and it's worth mentioning that in collaboration with the National Observatory of Athens, our region collects and analyzes climate data, including real-time monitoring of UHIs using satellite data. And also there are initiatives coming from municipalities of the region. The municipality of Athens, for example, is a different entity which has its own strategies and initiatives, like the ones that we have listed down here. So we have the framework, we have the tools, we have the directives, the strategies, the policies, and this is what we're trying to implement as regions. And I think this is applicable European-wide. So if we move to the next slide, excuse me, we can see the challenges that we face while moving forward with putting in place those policies and trying to implement some strategies, some response strategies. And these have to do with, I have listed down here only the four, to my view, most important, prominent ones, while there are others, of course. But there are challenges coming from governance and bureaucratic hurdles when tackling with UHIs. There are other challenges coming from public awareness and engagement, which is low at the moment, and their residents may not understand fully the implications of the effect and the importance of participating and supporting related initiatives. But there are also, and most importantly, data and technology gaps, which mainly refer to the limited access to up-to-date data, although there are initiatives like the one with the National Observatory that I mentioned before, that apply to the satellite data and other monitoring systems. There is still a need for a more comprehensive and real-time data on UHI impacts to guide further interventions, and not only real time, but also historical data that can support decision-making mechanisms by the policymakers. And there is also lack of local expertise, not in the, of course, in the research ecosystem in the universities and even in the businesses, but basically in the ones that who are asked to use this advanced technology and capitalize on those data analytics to respond to the UHI phenomenon. And yes, I have listed down also one more important, which is the inadequate research and monitoring. Basically, in order to understand the specific causes of the effect of the region of Attica and effectively plan mitigation strategies tailored to the local and regional conditions. In the next slide, there is this overall depiction of what is the share of adaptation actions reported by European cities, big cities, by type of action and by and region. So what we can see here is that from all those policies and strategies that we mentioned before at the national, regional, or European level, all of them address at the end of the day some perspectives of the issue. And so what this figure shows us is that the technological perspective is the one that has the most attention by the policymakers and by the municipalities, the cities that are taking action, while in the Southern Europe, as we can see, this lags behind the overall and the average European level of attention on the physical and technological aspect of addressing this phenomenon. So this means that we have still space for improvement, especially in Southern Europe, where it seems that we basically focus at the moment on or ecosystem-based approaches before diving into more technological by nature approaches to respond to the issue and mitigate the risks. If we move to the next slide, we move directly to the second part of the challenge, which is or the second challenge, let's say, which is the wildfires in the Attica region. Like I said, as you can see in this figure, we have a basin in the middle with the metropolitan area of Athens and surrounded by mountains, which suffer from wildfires all the previous years. As you can see in this picture, this is the burnt area from 2018 to 2024 in Attica. So wildfires is an issue, and this is not an issue that is not connected. Actually, let's put it in a positive way. This issue is has direct connection and relation to the previous one. The heat islands in the urban areas are directly impacted by what is happening in the surrounding areas. So the two expressions say of the same phenomenon, the same root causes. So those are interrelated, and we would like to see interventions that that address both of those issues as one. So if we move to the next slide, Alan, please, very briefly, I would go through the current state of the issue of the wildfires in the Attica region. Well, it is a phenomenon that is increased in the last years. Only in 2023 we had 18 major wildfires in Attica. The human and economic toll is high also. From a single fire in 2018 we had 102 fatalities and widespread destruction on homes and businesses, and only 2021 the damages caused by wildfires exceeded €500 million. So the climate change, the urban expansion is an important parameter of this problem, because we have rising temperatures and prolonged waves and droughts also due to the climate change. And important parameter is also the urban sprawl, because city has expanded into previous forested areas, creating a dangerous wildland-urban interface where homes and businesses are located close to fire-prone areas. And also we have the environmental damage. For example, the deforestation caused by the fires also leads to soil erosion, which in turn increases the risk of flooding, etc. So if we move to the next slide, again, we have regional, national, and European policies that are applicable. Most of them are similar to the ones that we mentioned in the first part. I would like again to emphasize on the fact that we have an initiative for a smart firefighting and early warning system, again with the National Observatory of Athens and the Center of Excellence, which is called Beyond, which provides fire risk assessments, real-time alerts, and damage reports by combining satellite data from Sentinel-2 and MODIS. And also we have other initiatives like the central, driven by the state, I mean civil protection modernization initiative. And again, we have some local municipal initiatives in Athens driven by cities, by municipalities that are most prone to this, most exposed to such kind of risks. And the final slide about the wildfires, again, which is the challenges that we are facing while trying to address the issue and take actions according to our policies, guidelines, and strategies. Here, I would just like to emphasize two of them: the public awareness and engagement. Again, it's very important to have the support and the public engagement for the success of each strategy, this initiative, but most importantly, the data and technology gaps that we are having here as well, because although satellite data and other implementations like drones systems, for example, are available for monitoring fires and predicting risks, like we see, and especially I'm referring again to the pilot initiative with the National Observatory of Athens. Their use is still in early stages, and there is space and there is room for improvement, for scaling, and for such kind of solutions that make them more efficient, more applicable to all the municipalities, because it's important that all the benefits that are coming from such kind of initiatives flow down to each of the municipalities, each of the citizens in the region. Because many municipalities, for example, they are lacking access or even the expertise to interpret, understand, or act upon such kind of data or reports that they're getting. And there is also a need for more consistent and detailed fire risk mapping and data collection for a comprehensive understanding of the fire-prone areas in order to prioritize prevention, firefighting resources, and more effectively. Well, yes, this is, I think I exceeded my time already. I just wanted to give you an overview by focusing again on those two challenges, which, like I said, interrelated. Heat islands and wildfires in our region, and they are also common to all European regions as well. Probably in the south of Europe, they are it's a more important and more important issue than in other areas. And we also saw some try to give you some highlights of how the data and technology and the research in this direction can support the initiatives and the implementation of the policies that we have in place, aligned with the national and the European ones. So thanks again. I'm open for questions. Hopefully I can answer. Last slide and closing, Alan.
Yes, thank you. If you want to contact Petros, here are his email address. Thank you so much, Petros. And of course, the project won't solve all the problems, but I think we should definitely focus on the data and technology gaps that you know, Petros, and in a lesser extent the research gaps. Let's now discover, dig into the issues that Ghent is facing in terms of water-related risks and floodings. They are, according to the European Environmental Agency, the most deadly risks. And I welcome Professor Renat de Sutter from Ghent University. Renat, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alan, and good morning, everybody. In this short presentation, I will try to deal with lots of information, as you see. but indeed always available to discuss more in depth. Yes, Alan. Next slide, please. First of all, some, let's say, basic theory, but very important in a lot of use cases. One forgets which kind of flooding is actually causing the problem. Most people think immediately about, I would say, fluvial flooding, rivers flooding, and a lot of cities have to deal with that. Most people also know coastal flooding, and then you might have something in between. A lot of cities are lying in a delta, low-lying delta area, sometimes very big cities, certainly in Asia, for instance, where you face both tidal influence as well as rainfall, where these two come together, let's say. And then certainly in urban areas and cities, we have a thing called what we call pluvial flooding. So there's no river to be seen, but because of heavy rainfall that cannot find its way to a river or the sea, you get flooding from that urban area. Again, in certain cities, it all comes together, unfortunately. Yes. Now, what causes flooding? And also that, I just mentioned that you have different types of flooding, but also that is important. Yeah, we don't have in Belgium, but some of the countries around the digital table here, and they have to face law from mountainous areas. There can be storms, wind, but also a tidal influence causing the problem. There can be heavy rainfall. We are facing the Boris depression at the moment in certain parts of Europe, for instance. But also sometimes simply because some structure, especially let's say in our Nordic countries, there's a lot of water management structures. If they fail at the wrong moment, then it all goes wrong. Again, maybe a bit too theoretical, but one forgets that flooding is a very natural phenomenon. So precipitation always varies, and a river has to deal with that. I'll come back to the influence of climate change, but of course also that is changing that natural phenomenon. But we have to look at ourselves, and there's a lot of human influence that causes flooding. We have been strengthening rivers, filling up ditches. Rivers have been, let's say, changed completely into parking lots of houses. So the increase of impervious areas has been tremendous in a lot of our cities. And maybe a well-known fact is that we have been building too much in floodplains, and I work a bit everywhere around the world, and there's a big difference in how spatial management deals with that in the different countries. If I say we have been building, then I'm mostly looking at our Flemish country, not trying to accuse everybody here. Yes. Climate change, not the time to discuss that in detail, but the some way of another, every climate change influence passes through the water system. Sea level rise is a very well known one and causes more flooding. It's not only the average level, but also the extreme levels. Rainfall, of course, but also drought sometimes. So let's say all these influences, and certainly the uncertainty associated with it, is important to deal with. And we have been tackling that by scenarios, as I guess in any country, with the disadvantages or the uncertainties today on how it will evolve. And I would say also stressing the fact that meanwhile, the socio-demographic situation is changing, and the climate experts are unfortunately not taking that too much into account. So you're looking at the future, which is a climate change future, but meanwhile, what will happen in 100 years? Try to think back 100 years, and then the situation is, of course, completely different. Nevertheless, very important to deal with these possible scenarios. Yes. Now, impact. On purpose, I'm using this picture, which might not be very clear, but that's the point. Flood impacts are, first of all, people, at least here in our country of Flanders, we think about monetary direct influence, water in the basement, and creating, I would say, economic impact on the infrastructure, on individual houses, etc. But the situation is much more complex. You have ecological influences, you have social influence to people that are have risk of drowning or have faced a flooding. And you have direct impact, but also indirect impact when cleaning up or in cases of long time flooding. And this, makes that the impacts, but also the adaptations that are possible need to tackle this complex interaction of, I would say, economic, ecological, and social impacts and associated losses. A lot is documented on monetary terms, but I think the non-monetary terms are sometimes as important and often overlooked. Yes. The kind of typology we use in terms of measures is also used in other countries. So the idea of multi-layer water safety, prevention, protection, and preparedness is often used to suggest the wide variety of measures that you can take. First of all, before something happens, and then it's reducing that human impact, for instance, by less pavement or creating flood-proof buildings is one example of prevention. Maybe not building where you shouldn't build is also a way of preventing. The most well-known one is protection, I would say. We're thinking about controlled floodplains, dikes, but even today, there's a lot of, I would say, suggestions related to protecting individual homes up to water levels of 1 or 1.5 meters. And several EU countries, there's quite some, unfortunately, quite some expertise related to that. And then the last one, when it all, let's say the event is happening, the preparedness. And then we're talking about the flood forecasting by the hydrological experts, but also the whole chain of crisis management in terms of getting the right information in, taking the necessary measures, and trying to evacuate people or trying to, let's say, save whatever is possible. And it's clear that it will all be needed as a combination. And it also makes clear that this, I would say, governmental institutes are showing that it's not only the government that will, let's say, solve the problem. It's also looking at individuals. It's also looking at certain companies that have to take their part of the responsibility in dealing or adapting to these flooding situations. Yes. Maybe just one small example of Ghent. Why do I do not consider Ghent as the most flood-prone area of the world, but it's what I call the whole of Flanders is a nice living lab. We face all sorts of floodings. Luckily, the impact is not that large, and we can, let's say, play around as researcher with a lot of solutions. For the ones that don't know Flanders, it's like a very urbanized area. You could compare it with Greater London or Greater Paris in surface and population. What are we doing? For instance, making very big plans like the Sigma plan, dealing with the tidal part of the Scheldt between Antwerp and Ghent. And on the left, what I'm showing there with a lot of is actually sort of the ring road around Ghent. And the reason I'm showing it is because when you're dealing with the flooding of a city, you might also have to look at the bigger picture and the other way around. And like in this case, we have two big rivers, the Lay and Scheldt, coming from France to Ghent. And part of the problem is, or the solution, let's say, is to be found in France. Even some of our water gets into the Netherlands. So we also have to be very polite to our Dutch neighbors in order to solve our flooding problems. So again, it's also a geographical combination of taking measures in your whole river system, but also very locally within your city, trying to work with that. Yes. There's a lot of documentation of what somebody can do within cities. And then here I'm focusing especially on an example from the UK in terms of pluvial flooding solutions. The reason I'm taking this picture, because it also shows that it's solutions on different scales, the building scale, the neighborhood scale, and the catchment scale. And it immediately rings a bell in terms of a very much linked with spatial planning, urban planning within a city. And those things take time. And so it's always trying to find a solution today, but also plan for the future, plan your city that it is more let's say flood proof, more adapted to these climate risks. Yes. Yeah, just an illustration of how far one can go, and also in cities in trying to protect your houses. We have a lot of brochures, a lot of pilot studies here in Flanders on trying to convince people, show them that they will have to do something on their individual scale. And this will be part of the necessary actions that need to be taken by individuals and governed, let's say, by a city or a region in order to make sure that, let's say, the correct measures are being taken. Yes. Now, ending with this slide, what do I consider as the key challenges for floods in cities related, of course, to the link with the project as such? I think, first of all, the forecasting and the alerting. As a hydraulic expert, I could say that, yes, we are quite well advanced in, let's say, trying to model the water system. We can do that very accurate. But then one has to take a few other steps. Which kind of data are we using? Sometimes we can predict water levels up to less than 1 centimeter accurate. But then how good are our, for instance, urban planning data that we are using? How good is our meteo information coming in? So all this kind of, I would say, geodata, climate data is certainly, there is room for improvement. But then also on the other side, I would say the impact assessment. How good is our information on houses, on infrastructure, on the people as such, in terms of where are they and what are they doing, for instance, in an alert situation. And then also the whole chain, I would say, of how to deal with this kind of information. We are today, luckily in Flanders, we are quite well advanced in all these kind of modeling approaches, but there is also regions in Europe and outside of Europe where data scarcity is an issue, and also where hydraulic models, because of the size of the country, are not that well advanced. So certainly in that first item, I see a clear link and a lot of possibilities, let's say, with certain SMEs here that are following this seminar. Secondly, I know there has been a seminar on urban planning. I think a lot of what has been said there is also relevant for flooding. Flooding has to deal with the paradox of a growing city. From mobility and density point of view, one could say, let's all live together in cities. From the water point of view, it's about the worst thing you can do. But there's also linkage with other challenges. The drought aspects, it sounds strange, but flooding and drought are, let's say, two exponents of the same problem. Also the urban heat island effect. If you're doing sustainable urban planning, these all have to be accounted for in a good adaptation approach. And then, a last problem, maybe not that clear on what the link is with the topic of this project, but especially in Flanders, I guess also in a lot of other countries, the water governance is an issue. There's a lot of water managers around the table, a lot of crisis planners around the table, often with all a specific task, and this whole governance problem and crisis control, communication, but also who makes the right decisions, who has the authority, is an issue during normal situations, but certainly in critical events, it prevents us from, I would say, a good integrated approach. So certainly also there is large room for improvement. Thank you. I think that was my last slide. Just an example, correct. I forgot one slide, my apologies. Can you move to the next one? I think I will finish there.
Sure, yeah.
Showing one example of what we are doing, both, let's say, with my university cap on, but also with my private engineering company hat on, is decision support system, digital twins. It's a buzzword, but I think the advantage of moving to these systems is that you're not only looking at flooding as a separate issue, but that you can also deal with other types of models, integrate them, and make the right decisions on the different time and geographical scales that I mentioned. It's all a bit complex when you see it like that, but I think it's important to move in city environments to these kind of decision support system, supporting, of course, the persons that really need to push the button of the solution. So work ongoing, but certainly a lot of possibilities to further explore this topic.
Thank you, Renat, for this presentation. Speaking of digital twins, we will present you the requirements, and one of the potential requirements is the interoperability with the city's digital twins and digital tools. So this is very accurate to highlight, I think. Okay, so now we have seen the two major risks for urban areas, for cities across Europe. And as we've seen with in the first slides, the climate adaptation cycle, once you have identified risks in your cities, is to select solutions and monitor the effects of those solutions. So through one of the EU Mission on Adaptation project called Regions for Climate, Heli Ponto from Forum Virium Helsinki will present us what and how can space data be used to monitor nature-based solutions, among other solutions. Heli, feel free to begin your presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, here. Good morning, everyone, and nice to see you all here. And like Alan said, my name is Heli, and I'm telling you about our project, Regions for Climate, where we are working with climate adaptation and social vulnerability. And we also have used satellite data as part of our digital twin demo that we have developed as part of the project. And these slides are prepared with Dr. Juho-Pekka Virtanen from Forum Virium Helsinki. And we are an innovation company owned by the city of Helsinki. And we are non-profits. And we are mostly working with the EU projects. Around 2/3 of our funding comes from the European Commission. And if this presentation interests you, or you would like to be in touch with concerning the topics that I'm talking about, or you would like to prepare a project with us, please be in touch with me. Okay, the next one, please. Briefly here, I guess we all know that climate change has very heavy impacts, like discussed by earlier presenters here today. And probability of extreme weather conditions has increased in Europe and also in Finland. And effects are visible everywhere, also here in Finland and Helsinki. And the potential risks may occur unexpectedly. But what is interesting to us in our project is that climate risks are not distributed equally, and some are proportionally affected. This means that we are not equal when it comes to climate hazards. It depends, for example, your health conditions, how well you can take the impact of different climate hazards. Of course, it depends from your income level. Can you afford to buy an air condition or something else? And of course, your age, for example, if a person is very old or very young, the climate risks may feel more strong to these individuals. And as mentioned many times, adaptation and response, they are heavily needed, and it's inevitable adaptation. And we also need new innovations and technologies, but also attitude changes are needed. Like mentioned in the first presentation, if you remember the statistics, especially in the Northern Europe, knowledge behavior change is really needed because the risks may have not been that strong. Like the hazards have not seen so strong to us, but especially this is really needed, and this is also at the interests of our demo and the whole project to pay attention on climate adaptation and how to do it in socially just ways, and to pay more attention into this topic in Finland and Northern Europe as well. Yeah, next one, please. Yeah, about the project, Helsinki Uusimaa demonstration. It is EU Horizon funded, and it composes of 12 regional demonstrations. This is a huge project. We have 45 partner organizations and over 200 project partners. And Virium Helsinki is leading Helsinki Uusimaa demonstration. And as part of the demonstration, we have developed a digital twin demo or an application to better understand heat and flooding impacts and also socioeconomic vulnerability. We have combined different data sets, including buildings, land cover, green elements, trees, and so on, socioeconomic data, and also heat index. And maybe most interestingly to you, we have used satellite data to visualize surface temperatures and calculated the values for buildings to visualize heat impacts. Yeah, next one, please. Okay, here on the right side, you can see a print screen taken from our demo application. And the color is indicating the surface temperature, and the more reddish the color is, the higher is the Celsius degree. And of course, we are talking about surface temperatures. We don't know what's happening inside the buildings, but this is still very valuable. And what are the advantages of satellite data? It is very relatively easy to calculate. It is openly available, of course, if you use open data. And thanks to services like Sentinel Hub, data is easy to use and retrieve. And what are then the drawbacks? Resolution problems exist with open data. For example, here in our demo, this is the most detailed level you can get. For example, we don't know what's happening in the yards. We don't know about the microclimates and anything that's happening in more detailed level. And data availability is also a question. It's not, satellite data is not obviously available on cloudy days and not every day. The data we have used, and data coverage is limited in some constellations in northern latitudes, and this is because of the routes of the satellites. And the next one, please. Yeah, the Helsinki perspective, thermal satellite data. Yes, our Regions for Climate demonstration has raised really a plenty of interest among the city stakeholders. Here you can see a raster view into the same topic. The height of the pillar is indicating the population, and the color again is showing you the temperature, air temperature. But along with this data, we have also bought data from Statistics of Finland And we have composed indexes to better understand socioeconomic vulnerability. And in a similar way, it is raster data, 250 per 250 meters. And there we can see if we have, for example, rasters that seem to have more vulnerability in the indicators, and at the same time heat impact. So this kind of cross-checking has raised really a lot of attention among the city stakeholders. And our demonstration also underlines nature-based solutions and the role of green elements. And even if we haven't done any very specific calculations, it is very easily seen by the city stakeholders that, hey, if you have green elements, the surface temperatures are usually much lower, and the opposite way around. If there are no green elements, there is a higher heat impact usually. Of course, the sea has an impact, but still it is very easy to raise attention around this topic when you have something to share and show. And there has been interest in combining different hazards into the same view. And we are working with the VTT, National Technological, sorry, now I don't remember what's that in English, but they are doing scientific research in flooding, especially in particular in urban flooding, like mentioned by Renat, pluvial flooding. And we would like to combine this flooding view with the heat view, because this kind of cross-checking platforms do not really exist, especially when combined with socioeconomic characteristics. And yeah, the next one, please. Yeah, this is my second last slide to conclude on satellite data value and data availability. Satellite thermal data currently is the only constantly updated thermal data set with the whole city coverage, and that's why we have also used it, and it is really a central data set in our demo. Data integrations, combining satellite data with other data sources, for example, socioeconomic indexes, it really offers new insights, like mentioned many times. Satellite data, it is very affordable. With open satellite data, no significant costs are, especially when prototyping applications like we have done. But at the same time, through application of satellite data products in cities, it needs new service development, and there has to be a high emphasis on use case and ease of use. You really have to have questions to the data, like and find people who are interested in these topics. And for example, first we thought that this may interest urban planners, but actually we found out that it is a social and healthcare sector that it is interested, because this is data from existing city, and not all urban planners, but many urban planners are planning new districts. So this is interesting to the ones who are working with the existing city already, and maybe making some nature-based solutions to increase the adaptation levels. But yeah, this kind of observations. And the last slide, please. Yeah, here are my contact details, and please be in touch if you are interested in this or would like to prepare a project with us. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Heli. We are now. I thank the three cities for presenting their challenges related to to climate risks and to climate adaptation solutions. I just want to recall you providers that those sub-challenges that were presented and those use cases are not mandatory to address within SPACE4Cities, but they are just ideas for you to understand the needs of the cities and to develop the best solution for cities. So now we'll see related to SPACE4Cities, the PCP, and first the requirements with our coordinator Renske from Forum Virium also, and I draw your attention on the fact that those requirements apply to all challenges. So the urban planning challenge, the climate adaptation planning challenge that we've seen today, and the sustainable mobility challenge that we will present in end of October. Renske, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alain. And I can also see that on the right side, the Slido poll has popped, right? So everyone's encouraged to answer to the Slido questions as well.
Yeah, the Slido is on the right side of your screen. Feel free to ask questions, especially on this session. Thank you, Renske.
All right, if you make the screen large, Alain, because now, yeah, exactly. Hi, everyone. Yes, so Renske Martijnse, indeed, also from Forum Virium, the coordinator of SPACE4Cities. Nice that you're all here. So the past hour or so, we've gotten more into the content and the different challenges, and now it's a bit more time to talk about, let's say, the process, because I'll also be speaking about the PCP process, the procurement process later on. But first, a bit about the tender requirements. They are quite general, as Alain said, and it's good to emphasize it. For every solution that is offered, they need to be met regardless of the challenge. They're applicable to all challenges and sub-challenges. Also good to note in advance is to keep in mind that in the eventual call for tenders, in the final version that will be published in January, there will be must-haves and nice-to-haves. They are not yet in this these slides now, and they are still then in the concept phase. That's part of our open market consultation to now discuss these with you. We want your feedback. We're interested to hear if you find these feasible and reasonable. There's some other Slido questions on this at the end. I'll go, thank you, into the requirements themselves. So we divided them into 3 categories. The functional part, about what your solution should do. The non-functional part, more about what it should achieve for society. And then the feasibility part, where you would show us that you can deliver on a good solution. And so part of the tender documentation that will be published is let's say, a form, a template that you will follow to submit your offer, and you're going to have to describe how your solution answers these requirements. Next slide, please, Alain. So first of all, maybe the next slide, because I think this goes into the what. Yeah, exactly. Let's focus on that first. First of all, this project is funded by Horizon Europe, managed by USPA. They require, or the reason why we got this funding is that the use of Copernicus Earth observation data or Galileo positioning data, it has to be essential for your solution. As been said already previously, you can use other data too. We very much expect that you will combine it with other data sources, but also commercial satellite data. Totally fine. You need to show us that your solution could not have been made without the Copernicus or the Galileo data. Because that's why the funding is here to encourage the use of that kind of European satellite data by cities and in cities. So that's kind of the first space data part. Then the dynamic management part, as opposed to sort of static data, it's important that the solutions that are developed as part of this project, they enable they enable more dynamic management of public areas or management of the city, let's say, in general. So dynamic as in more agile, faster, being able to react to changes more easily. And we have already established that I mean, these public areas, they cover a lot, right? From green spaces to transport infrastructure, city maintenance, the overall city, sort of the resilience and the functionality of the city. And the solution creates then actionable insights for the city. Then there's the processing of the data, because we can, of course, cities can gather this data themselves. You see as well from Heli's presentation previously that there are things being done by the city and their innovation organizations already. So your solution should do definitely more than just deliver data, right? Actionable data is what's needed. Insights for cities that they have difficulties generating themselves. The solution should, of course, I would almost say, be very innovative. So we're definitely not looking for something that's already on the market. It should be not off the shelf, but something that's not yet commercially available yet. The idea is that the solution will be developed during this pre-commercial procurement process, during this period of around 2 years, and should go beyond the state of the art. In previous webinars and meetings with suppliers, we've often gotten the question, so how do you define innovative? What does it mean? Please be more specific. It's difficult because it varies per solution. So the burden, let's say burden, is on the side of the suppliers to describe in their offers, this is how it's done now, this is how we can do it better. So you need to describe to us how it goes beyond the state of the art. And of course, we will be evaluating these solutions also with experts, and we have our own state-of-the-art analysis, but it's on you as a supplier to describe this to us. Next slide, Alain, or next part. So how are you going to make your solution work? Of course, it should eventually be used by people working in a municipality or a region. So we want you to show us how you make sure that they can actually use it. So what's the user experience like? How does it work with existing tools, etc.? It should be piloted as well, your solution, during phase 3. I'll get back to that when talking about the PCP as well. We'd like to see a plan for this. So how does this look? What will, how will you improve your solution over time? This is not something you'd have to do in detail already in the very first phase, but if you get further in the project, this will be an increasingly important requirement. Support and maintenance. So if and when the city eventually will procure this solution, they want to know also about service levels, who has which responsibilities, how do you support the city in using this solution? Next part, why is this a good solution? First of all, relevance. We have presented now in the previous webinar and this webinar the different 2 of the 3 challenge themes. The next one coming up, the last one in October, and ideally your solution should be within these challenges. As Alain said, they don't have to be exactly the use cases that were presented today, but the challenge topics are deliberately left relatively wide. There's also a wild card though, so if you have a fantastic idea that allows for a more dynamic, better management of cities, then you can submit that too. Quality, show us what are your unique selling points, why is it better than anything out there, what can it do that it's special, etc. So that's for the functional requirements. And for the non-functional ones on the next slide, what will it do for, let's say, society as a whole? So you need to describe, and this is an important part as well, that describe your positive impacts. Is it environmental, economic, societal, are there cost reductions, emission reductions, efficiency gains? I mean, what does it contribute? Describe your future vision as well. The cities, they need to be ready for different types of future. So what does your solution kind of potential does it unlock for society in the longer term for the cities? And what's the difference from today? So how will the status quo be impacted? Describe what kind of will change over time when your solution is implemented, and what's good about it. All right, next slide, the feasibility part. So you need to also show logically that you are capable of delivering on your solution and your ideas. So we need to see a management plan, the schedule, methodology, risk management measures, quality assurance measures. We want to know who will be doing this project. What does your team look like? What competencies do they have? Maybe you have references from previous projects. We'd like to know about that as well. Do you have a consortium in which you combine different capabilities? If so, what are the roles of the different consortium partners? That also needs to feed into the offer. And lastly, the commercial feasibility. How can we actually see that your solution will be scalable? How do you foresee to bring it to the market towards the end of this project? And remember that it needs to be replicable in terms of it needs to be, you need to be able to pilot it not only in the one of the 5 lead cities, but also in 2 different replicator cities. We'll have 10 of those, and the 5 winning solutions each need to also have a shorter term, smaller scale pilot in the replicator cities. And we will have a group of at least 50 follower cities. I mean, the idea is that your solution could be used throughout Europe, even though we very well realize that every city is different. Let's move along to the next slide. And this is the end. Let me see. No, let me mention one more thing from the previous slide, actually. And that's the scalability part. So we're talking replicability, but also scalability, not only among different cities, but it also needs to be technically scalable in case of like an increase in data over time or additional data sources procured or gathered by the city. They need to be able to, it needs to be able to scale, let's say, technically or scope-wise as well. Yeah, you can react via the Slido. You can send questions on this or comments via questions@space4cities.eu. We are limited in the interactions that we can have one-on-one with companies. It's the nature of this type of procurement that we are communicating through these kind of webinars. And then if you ask us a question, we will anonymize it and put the Q&A on our Q&A page on our website. There's already, I think, over 100. So if you have a question, I highly recommend you to check out the Q&A page.
Yeah, so the last part is on the PCP process that you will present, Renske. Just a brief remark. Be careful. I don't know if there is something on your mic, but it's sometimes we notice.
Okay, good to know.
But we can hear you.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, hey, I'll continue with this, and this is a bit more about the process itself. So pre-commercial procurement is not so common. It's not so well known. There are quite sort of strict rules imposed to us by the European Commission, quite strict timeline given to us by the funder, and I'm going to walk you through the next slide. So in a PCP, suppliers are competing throughout these different phases of development. It's divided in basically in 4 phases. We're still in the open market consultation, the very first ball here. In January, we then published the call for tenders worth 2.8 million in total, which will be open likely until the end of March or beginning of April, after which there is a large group of evaluators who will evaluate the proposals and select a top 18 to 20 suppliers. We'll sign a framework agreement with that group and a specific contract for phase 1. Note that that also means that in principle, your consortium or your partnership will stay the same. I mean, we sign a contract with this certain group of partners. There are only under very exceptional circumstances you can still add another company or partner during the PCP process. In phase 1, the suppliers then do their concept design. So it includes a prototype development plan. It includes business model for future, larger scale usage, feasibility study, more or less, right? So it's a short phase, 4 months only, around 40,000 euros per supplier. And do remember, you don't need to start from scratch. It can be a solution that you have already been working on, but it needs more R&D work, it needs more testing. Just note that it cannot be commercially available yet. That's important. At the end of phase 1, we have an evaluation round, and then half of the suppliers are dropped, and we sign contracts for phase 2 with only 9 or 10 remaining suppliers or consortia. Then there's a 7-month phase in which a working prototype will be developed, which will be demonstrated via simulations. So I guess we talk about like TRL 4.5 by then. And then there should, of course, also be a plan to develop limited volume of first solutions, kind of a roadmap for piloting. You need to start thinking about that, updated cost benefit evaluation, business plan, etc. So about 100,000 per supplier. And at the end, again, an evaluation process, half is dropped, and 5, let's say, winning suppliers, winning solutions move to this 3rd phase. And then the field testing takes place. This is also a bit longer phase, 10 months, 250,000 euros per supplier maximum. And as I mentioned before, 1 larger scale, longer term pilot in one of the buyers group, the 5 buyers group cities, and 2 smaller scale, shorter term pilots in replicator cities. So 3 pilots during this phase between kind of mid 26 and spring 27. After that, in the last months of the project, it's all about exploitation of the results, trying to roll out the solution, working on follow-up procurements as well, together with this large group of cities that we are engaging through this project. So all in all, you can say the budgets go up per phase and the number of suppliers goes down per phase. I guess that's quite clear now. Maybe the next slide, Alain, because I think it's that's more. This is another visualization of what I just said. So you could move to the next slide. I wanted to tell a little bit about who can actually apply for this PCP. Basically everyone, more or less, except authorities. So we expect most suppliers will be companies. They can be SMEs, startups, larger companies, but also research and technology organizations. Non-profits, associations can apply. Just to keep in mind, the solution has to be commercialized at the end of a project, and you need to kind of credibly show that you have a consortium that can do that. So a research institute applying by itself or on its own, you'd have to have a good story to show how you would commercialize this solution. Then you might need to try to find a commercial partner there. The lead tenderer should come from an EU country or one of the associated countries. If you want to know which countries those are, there on the Q&A page. Consortium members can come from outside of the EU, but at least half of the work should be performed in an EU member state or associated country. We get sometimes questions about this. Can I submit something by myself? Do I need a consortium? Up to you. We do expect probably that many tenderers will form a consortium of multiple organizations. Definitely not mandatory. Also not mandatory that you participate in the open market consultation. We are very happy you are here today, and I think hopefully it benefits you, but also other companies can join who weren't here today or in the OMC. Next one, Alain, please. So maybe some of these are quite obvious. There's the benefits for the suppliers. Of course, there's the funding support. It's like this is 100% grant for you to work on R&D to develop a solution very much based on the needs of the procurers. What else is great about this project? You will get to know a lot of new companies throughout Europe who work in similar or, let's say, complementary fields as you do. this can lead, we know this also from previous PCPs we run, it can lead to new collaborations, also kind of outside this pre-commercial procurement process. Good to know that the IPR stays with you after the PCP, so it doesn't transfer to the buyers group cities. We ask you to create something highly innovative, right? Beyond the state of the art. We realize it brings risks and R&D investment, but through this process, these risks are shared with the procurers, with the cities. The funding that you get will cover the cost for these pilots that I talked about, three field tests in 3 different cities. These can, of course, then be referenced for further commercialization. So it's a first, let's say, point of reference for you, for your solution. And it's nice to mention, I think, that SPACE4Cities already generated really a lot of interest among cities and regions throughout Europe. So if you manage to come up with a great solution, get through the process, make it until phase 3 and carry out successful tests, I think there's really excellent commercialization possibilities and opportunities beyond the project. There are many dozens, dare I say 80 plus at least, cities and regions already outside these project partners who have engaged with us, who have shown their interest and who are enthusiastic about satellite-based solutions. Also, I think this project will help create more awareness on the use of satellite data, the benefits it might bring for cities. So through this PCP, a lot of European cities have become already to some extent more knowledgeable on this topic about the possibilities, and you will, I think this will be beneficial for the companies too, and you will be able to work with many different cities. So yeah, I hope this piques your interest. If you, Alain, would move to the next slide. I think it wraps it up for now on my end, but I'm here to take questions. Yep. And there's a Slido as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Renske, for
sure
making clear this process, at least clearer. We have several questions regarding the template to submit to SPACE4Cities, to our consortium. Is there a template? Yes, there is, but it's a template to submit to the call for tenders, not to the OMC. The OMC is, as we said, a set of activities to engage with us before we write our requirements and selection criteria. So if you have to submit something, it's to the call for tenders in January. Also, is there a number of pages required, Renske?
Yeah, yes. We will, in the tender documentation, there will be like a page limit overview for the different forms, because there's, I mean, unfortunately, but that's a bit how it goes with these kind of tenders. There is some paperwork, so there's the offer that follows a certain template with page limits, indeed. But you also have to fill out some compliance forms, and that you are not. Well, there's these mandatory questions that you're not using, I don't know, live embryos or child labor or this, you know, they're mandatory from the side of the EU, and there's some checkboxes. But then the technical offer is the one that is the most sort of elaborate to fill, and the financial offer as well. The question about the participation in the OMC maybe relates to the form for matchmaking. So that's, if you talk about forms during the OMC, as Jose was asking, there's a matchmaking form if you want to search partners. I think, Alain, you might be mentioning it later, but that's absolutely not mandatory, and that is for whoever wants. But yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of consortia, is it possible to participate across several consortia? Is it allowed?
Yeah, in principle, I think we have not defined that it is not allowed to participate in 2 consortia, as long as, I mean, the solutions are different. Yeah, at least in previous PCPs, we have allowed this. Bear in mind, it's relatively, well, it's maybe quite some work to fill the paperwork, submit the offer. So I don't know time-wise if it would be possible, but yeah, if someone would be interested to submit different solutions, they can.
Maybe a last question before we wrap up this webinar. In the OMC, is it? Cecile asks if they should describe their existing solution or the one they want to develop in the project. I think you can see in the OMC survey that I will represent in a minute that both solutions. I mean, we will focus more on the existing solutions during the OMC because we have to understand what's the market able to develop right now, and what the market is about to do in the future also. So both, I would say both existing solutions and the one you want to develop. But I think during the call for tenders, you should focus on the one you want to develop. So.
Yeah, and of course you can put and should put reference projects of things that you have done already. When Cecile writes in the OMC, I'm also wondering, does it mean the matchmaking form?
Well, probably
survey, perhaps, or yeah, I don't.
There is in the matchmaking form you can add information regarding what you are looking for and what you are providing. So of course, do not put secrets in this form because it will be published online and publicly. But you can find. I mean, you can do both. I think in the matchmaking form.
Yeah.
But especially the one you want to develop, because you're looking for a partner, I think.
Yeah. And Alain, I see there's the question from Sylvie who asks that what are the expectations, because there are already some tools in place. I think that at least from Heli's and maybe also from Petros his presentation, it also became clear that there are still significant gaps. So even though there is some tools in place, it kind of gives an indication what is important to the cities, what the cities are working on, but the expectation is that a lot more detail can be provided. I mean, it really needs to go beyond what's already being done.
Yep. Maybe Heli, if you're still there, there is a last question regarding the data you used in your project. I guess space data and overall data.
Yes. You mean what data we used?
Yep.
Right. Yeah. It is actually Landsat data, and this is because of the resolution. It was more detailed. But yes, and of course, commercial satellite data providers can provide much more detailed data, but this was openly available. Yeah.
And other types of data, maybe like thermal data.
Other land cover data, Helsinki regional environmental services, and building data. I think this is the same institution, and what else? Some basic maps, cesium platform, and what else? Yes, also economic data, very basic statistics, and these are from Statistics of Finland.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, maybe the last one, because I think it's quite important for providers. Renske, what kind of support can they expect from the cities? Time for interviews, contact with civil servants.
Yeah, Definitely, definitely, especially towards the later phases in the project, and of course, especially during phase 3 when the pilots will happen, there will be, well, as I would almost say, as much contact as needed with the people that you need to implement the pilot. So definitely interviews. We can. That's also, I think, the good thing about these projects, that we can keep these lines very, very short, in addition to what's mentioned here. So time for interviews, contact stakeholders. Also, I would say help with any kind of permitting process or regulatory barriers that the cities can help to remove. Also in terms of communication, like publicity, media attention for the solutions during the phase 3 pilots. Yeah, as much as we can. I mean, that's the great thing about the PCP. It's almost some kind of co-creation process, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very trendy, but it's very important, I think, co-creation processes, especially for cities and technological demonstrators.
Yeah.
And also, well, matchmaking. I mean, we also provide you with other cities and potential customers in the replicability part.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, Renska. Just a brief word regarding the other OMC activities that I presented. So you have, and we strongly advise you to answer the supplier survey here. You can see on the left. There is also the OMC market, OMC community on LinkedIn. If you want more interactivity and also insights regarding space data and cities challenges. The questions at space4cities.eu is available for you at any time to send us questions. There is also a Procurement survey if you are a public authority listening to us right now, and you want to give your to explain your needs and to tell us that this project is interesting for you. And of course, the last webinar on the 25th of October, and the national webinars that I will show you right now. If you want information, there is still the newsletter and the LinkedIn group, and all these interactions will have to feed the Q&A page on our website. It's mandatory for us, and it's a transparent process that we want to keep with you. And the last slide is about the next events of the OMC. So you can see here the main webinar, the national webinars during the whole month of October in local languages. And in Greece, it will also happen in person, if I'm not mistaken, Petros. And we will also be present at the IAC in mid-October, and at the Smart City World Congress in the beginning of November, with many people from our project there. So come and meet us. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you on the 25th of October. And I want to thank again our speakers. That was very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.